Hello and welcome to the 4 columns exercise activity. This activity is based off of a book by Robert Kegan and Lahey called How the Way We Talk Can Change the Way That We Work. And it's all about going from the language of anxiety and attachments or complaints to the language of commitment. And the reason why this is important is that all of us have built in an immunity system to the change that we know we need the most. If you're a human being, most likely, chances are good that you're stuck somehow in your life, that there's some barrier that you face that you find especially difficult to get over. And despite talking about it, and despite knowing that this is something that's important to you, for some reason, you just can't make it happen. So a really good example are the things that happen around New Year's Eve and New Year's resolutions. We think about, okay, we might want to lose a little weight. So the resolution is to get on that treadmill and commit to losing weight. But what tends to happen is, as soon as we begin that resolution, and it's very difficult for us, there's something that is blocking us from actually getting on the treadmill and taking the first step. And this couldn't be a better metaphor for us in our lives and the way that we get stuck. And it might have to do with your career. It might have to do with a transition you'd like to make or are in the midst of. It might have to do with how you lead or how you take up the space of being in teams. No matter what it is, there's usually something that human beings feel stuck about. And so the 4 columns exercise is going to show you a way to map your own immunity to change. So this really requires some sitting down and writing and thinking. So what I'm going to do is actually step you through the 4 columns and give you time to actually write down the pieces and answer the questions that I'll be asking you. So make sure that you have a piece of paper and a pen. And my advice to you is to take your piece of paper from portrait and turn it landscape, so it's lengthwise. Once you've done that, I want you to draw 3 lines through the paper like this. So essentially what you will have are 4 columns. Okay? 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now, for your first column, I want you to think about if you were with your best friend, okay? And who knows you better than your best friend? This could be your mom, it could be a buddy, and you're in a relaxed environment where you feel like you can be yourself. And your best friend turns and says to you, you know what? There's one thing that I'm going to share with you, and it might be painful to hear it, but as your best friend, I feel like it's my job to say this. There's one thing that if you changed that about yourself, if you were able to change that one thing, your life would go so much easier. You'd enjoy life more, and you'd find a greater sense of happiness. So I want you to think about what that one thing is, okay? What would your friend tell you? And I'm going to give you an example. My mother happens to be one of my best friends. And there was a time when I originally did this exercise where she asked me, Bill, don't you feel like you're working too hard? Don't you feel like you need to take a moment or specific moments in your day to relax, to unwind? You seem to be running inefficiently. So the one piece of advice she gave to me was to find time to just be and enjoy life. Go for a bike ride, etc. So what you do is you take that thing that your friend would tell you and you turn it into the language of commitment. And you write in the first column, I want to be able to, and for me, this was find time to enjoy life. Now, it may be helpful if this is part of developing your own leadership and you'd like to use this to do that, to think about something that your friend would suggest you change about the way that you work. This might be Finding a way to say, look, I can't take on extra work. This is too much work. Or maybe it's being able to speak up in meetings. Maybe you're a little reticent to speak up in meetings. There are a number of things that people get stuck on, and it's neither good nor bad. It's just very human. So take a moment to flip that into the language of commitment and write a statement that finishes the sentence, I want to be able to. Okay, so hopefully you have something by now in column 1. Now what we'd like you to do is write down all of the things in column 2, or at least a few of the main things that you're doing that prevent you from column 1 coming true. So the question would be, what am I doing that's preventing me from finding time to enjoy life? Then you'll write underneath there, what are all the things that you're not doing, but you should be doing if you want to find time to enjoy your life, in my case. But this will be different for you. So here are some examples from my own case. As you know, I wanted to find time to enjoy life. But there's a couple of things that I'm doing that make it very difficult to find that time. One is I always take on more work. Like a full plate of spaghetti with an extra helping all dribbling off the side of the plate. Now, there's something going on there, and we'll talk about that a little bit later with motivation. But right now, we're just talking about behaviors, okay? Another one is that when I come home from work, I tend to go right from the front door into my home office and just get more work done. And frankly and honestly, I'll work till about 10:30 at night, skip dinner, which is completely unhealthy, and then somehow make it to bed and fall asleep. So going right back to work at home. So what am I not doing that prevents me from this? One, I'm not eating. I'm not eating lunch, and if I am, I'm scarfing it down. I'm going right on to the next thing, or I have a sandwich in one hand and a pen in another. I'm also not scheduling vacations. I'm also not saying no to more work. So this is just my example, but now you should take time to think about what things you're doing and not doing that prevent you from the commitment that you really want to change about yourself. So just take a few moments to write down just the things that stand out in your mind. Now, there are multiple things that you could write. But the things that usually come to mind first are the more important things. Now, in column 3, what you're going to write about are your anxieties. What will happen, what are you afraid of will happen if you start doing what you're not doing down here. So let's say start doing. And for me, this would include taking vacations, all of these things, beginning to eat and enjoy my lunch, and also anxieties that might be related, if you think about it, to stopping what you're currently doing. So I'm going to give you an example because this is kind of hard to understand without an example. What's my anxiety if I stop taking on more work? My anxiety, even though it's not really rational, and usually anxieties exaggerate things, my anxiety is that if I don't take on more work, I won't be special. I won't be able to stand out in the crowd as I always wish and hope that I will. And all of those come from certain points in my life that instruct me that standing out is really, really important and being special. And so my ego gets involved. And so I'm afraid that if I stop taking on more work, I'm going to fall behind. I'm not going to be special. Okay? So think about what are the things that you are afraid might happen if you stop doing what you're currently doing in column 2. Likewise, you want to write down the anxieties you have if you were to start doing what you're not doing. And they're very similar for me. So let's say I actually take time to enjoy lunch and life. One of the things I'm afraid might happen is I might forget additional things that I have to get done. So all those little things that I like to take care of at lunch. And that would haunt me, right? So throughout the day, I'd be constantly worried about, did I, pick up the dry cleaning? All of those little things that I like to get done during lunch. Also, if I schedule vacation, I'm worried that people at work, even though this is rational, will think I'm slacking off. Who deserves a vacation, right? Everyone's working, constantly working. So I'm worried about what other people will think. So now take some time to write down your anxieties. And in the fourth and final column, what I want you to write down is the big, bad worry that you have if all of the things in column 3 come true. Now, this is where you get really irrational. But it's also important because we rarely go to this place, and that's what this exercise is all about. So my big bad worry in this scenario is that if I fall behind and I'm no longer special and I forget to do those additional things, and people will think that I'm being lazy and slacking off, that I'll lose my job. That people will distance themselves from me. So they might look at me and say, Bill's not who he used to be anymore, so I might lose friends. I might be depressed. And so on and so forth. So take time now to write down in column 4 the big bad worry that you have that might prevent you from doing the things that you know you need to do. This usually comes right to the tip of your tongue. It's something that you know. It's in your heart. Now, lastly, what we need to do is we need to do something. We need to sort of trick ourselves a little bit here. We need to think of a baby step. Something little that we can do in the next day or week to do one of these things that we're not doing, right? So for instance, take a lunch and see if by taking that baby step, what we feel comfortable doing, all of these bad things will come true. Now, if we think rationally, we know that if I take a baby step of eating lunch next week, one day out of the entire week, let's make it a real baby step, rationally, these things probably won't come true, right? Very small likelihood if I enjoy my lunch once next week that all of these will come true. So what's important is not to begin to rationalize, but to actually put that on your calendar and do it and see if it comes true or not. Now, this is important because most transformations, when you think about transformative learning, most transformations happen not romantically, like big, immediate, transformations out of the blue, like all of a sudden I'll be Mr. Relaxed and I'll have no problem doing these things. But usually transformations start with a first step, okay? So think about what your first step is. And what tends to happen is that if you're going to change the way that you relate with other people, if your 4 columns has to do with the way that you relate with other people, particularly at work, then small changes can actually have profound implications for your relationships, because people tend to pick up on the small things, right? For instance, you might want to become more familiar with your employees at work, and you know when you realize that you have a hard time talking with them, and you may seem distant to them. But what would happen if one morning you actually said hello to another employee? Something like that, something really small, can serve as a spark for major transformation in your life. So what I'd like you to do is think about a baby step that you can do today or tonight, this week, and this month. So you think about those things and you try them out. And understand that this is an exercise that is a living exercise. It doesn't stop when this video ends. And I encourage you to really take these baby steps and maybe even work with somebody else on a 4 columns and take the baby steps together and encourage each other. Thank you for taking time to do the 4 columns. I hope this works out really well for you.